Hey, I'm Lady Ann. I am a TKGA certified master knitter, and I'm co-owner of WoolTribe.co. We are a dye studio and fiber art studio located in a cabin in the mountains of North Carolina. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about yarn. And if you're just starting out, I want to tell you what you're going to see when you walk into a craft store or a yarn shop, and kind of how to start to figure out what you're looking at and what you might need for a project. So let's get started and take a look. Okay, here I've got a bunch of different kinds of yarn. I have this first one, which is a commercially spun and commercially dyed ball or cake of yarn. It has an information band on it or a ball band. Most yarns that are commercially dyed and spun will have this, and it contains information about the fiber content, how many yards or meters of yarn are in this ball, how much the ball weighs. It'll also tell you, as this one does oftentimes, what size needles to use. For example, this one says a US 4 or a 3.5 millimeter knitting needle, and it says you get 26 stitches in 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Likewise, it'll tell you for crochet, similar information so that you can figure out with that needle or with those needles or with that hook, how many stitches in 4 inches or 10 centimeters you're going to get. You'll need to know that because when you knit patterns, oftentimes they'll tell you the gauge and what you need to have in terms of gauge to make that pattern. So that's the first one. That one's actually made of mercerized cotton. I wanted to show you this. This started out as a hank, a twisted hank or skein like this. We'll talk about that in a second. But this is also mercerized cotton. But this one is super shiny. This one, and I've got ink on my thumbnail, excuse that. But this one says it's mercerized cotton, as does this. So you're going to find that even if there is similar fiber in two different yarns, it's likely that they may have sort of a different finish. So look at that and see what you like best. Now I'm looking at this skein. This is a hand spun skein that I spun on a shacked sidekick spinning wheel. It was made using hemp and cotton fiber grown in North Carolina, and then I naturally dyed it. So I ended up I do this with my hand spun skeins. I put my own tag on it to tell me everything about the yarn that I spun so that I don't forget it. And don't fool yourself into thinking you won't forget, because eventually you will. This is a cone of yarn. Cones of yarn will give you a ton more yardage. You can save money in some cases depending on the project you're doing by buying a cone of yarn. In this case, I bought this because it came from our supplier, Meridian Millhouse, and it's American cotton. I wanted 100% American cotton, and so I ordered this yarn, and it actually has the information inside on a sticker, which if you buy a cone of yarn, oftentimes that will be the case. So there's that. And then this is a skein of yarn that I hand spun. It's another skein. You can see it looks very different, but it's the same put up, which means the same way of, putting the yarn into a packaged format. This one is a superwash merino and rambouillet fiber that I spun into this hank. I can tell by looking at the tag on this one, it has 386 yards and 115 grams. So it's probably around a sport or a DK weight yarn, which we'll talk in another video about yarn weights so you understand that. Then I have this one. This is a commercially spun, hand-dyed hank of our yarn. So I didn't have to hand spin this. We bought this skein of yarn, and then we dyed it, and that's how the color got onto it. Now you cannot knit directly from any of these three. You have to turn these into a ball of yarn in order to knit from them, if you want to avoid headaches, that is. So let's take this off and just take a look at what a skein of yarn looks like. And it's a pretty, you can see over here, it's a pretty big circle. So I can make it a little smaller and put it on the smaller camera here, or on the other camera. So it's a circle, and what you do is put that circle of yarn, that big loop of yarn, onto what's called a swift. A swift spins around so that the yarn moves freely off of the hank and onto a ball winder, and that's how you end up getting this form. And you would either pull from the center or pull from the outside of the ball, and you can knit from this. I do want to make you aware that with our yarn that we hand dye at WoolTribe, every skein of yarn has a ball band on it, and it has the information on it, including the fiber content and the yardage and the gauge and needles you might want to use. And you'll also see on our ball bands a color name. Most indie dyers are going to have some kind of information with their yarn. It'll either be a ball band like this or a tag or something so that you know what that yarn contains and you get a little more information about it. The last thing I'll show you, just because they're really fun, this is a tiny little skein of single ply. This is one strand of yarn that I spun. And actually these were leftovers from when I would spin, and then I plied the yarn. And so I just kept winding it onto a bobbin, and I ended up with this. And then another form of hand spun you might see is this kind of crazy thing, which is called barber pole, because of the two colors twisted together. This is another ball of yarn where anytime I had leftovers, I just added it onto the bobbin so that I could have this Frankenskein, which is really fun to use in all kinds of projects like weaving and other things. So that is pretty much it in terms of the kinds of yarn you might come across. If you have questions about all of this, drop them in the comments. I'd love to help you figure out answers to your yarn questions. And also like this video and subscribe, because we're going to keep doing a lot more tutorials. We're so glad to be providing this for you, and hope you'll stick around to see some more. So that's it. I'm Lady Ann. Thanks so much for watching.